Okay, well, I see Bill Maroney from USCF is on, and he says he's got some stats he wants to share. So, Bill.
Sure. So I think, like all organizations that are involved in competition, as we saw competitions come to a halt, we saw our sports come to a halt for a while. But I agree with Billy and others that people are just so eager to compete. It's amazing to me. So we've been keeping weekly stats just to track participation. So the first couple of weeks after June 1st, when we started to get going again, we would see 35% compared of competitions and horse participation compared to the same week in 2019. But now we're just this past week, we had more horse shows. So we had 107% compared to 2019. We had a couple more horse shows last week than we had in 19. And we had 700 more horses showing last week than the
Wow.
comparable week in 19. So overall, we're operating at about 72% of horse shows since June 1st till last week, and 69% of horses competing. And that's, we think, a pretty solid group of statistics for what's going on in the world and as much uncertainty as there is. And people are eager to show. Our board approved a resolution to support a PRESMA that had been approved earlier to amend rules as necessary to help organizers and participants be able to be very nimble in some areas of the country when local and state public health authorities and governors are restricting competition in certain areas and unrestricting it in others. We're seeing people pop up a horse show and have 600 or 700 people within a 2-week time period going to that competition, and just grateful they have a place to go. And organizers are doing a good job of trying to keep everybody in compliance with our COVID-19 action plan. Of course, face masks, social distancing are probably the hardest because people forget about that. But even the competitors overall, I think they're doing pretty well on trying to make sure that they are part of the community to keep our horse shows happening and keep our sports alive and open so that people can maintain businesses and those that participate can enjoy horse sports. I do agree that with what some of the other people are seeing, that memberships, horse recordings, things like that, horse transfers are staying pretty solid compared to non-COVID years, because people need those even if they're only going to participate once or twice. So those are a little bit shielded from what's happening to the competition numbers themselves. So it's been a pretty interesting ride. We're in the process now of approving modifications to breed discipline rules for 2021 to get them out next week, so organizers can be planning ahead. But we're budgeting and forecasting based on these numbers we're seeing for 21, and extremely hopeful that we will have been proven to have missed on revenue and have a lot more come in and get back to a level of normalcy by the second half of 21, and continue to expand our programs, because we're from the international side on an Olympic track and from the national side on a championships track for next year.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate that. So I've got 3 people I want to call on because we'll get various perspectives. So Scott Dorenkamp, are you on? Scott's with the Professional Rodeo Cowboy Association. How are you guys doing, Scott?
Oh, we're doing all right. I mean, we're down at least 50% from how many rodeos we've had last year. Lost most of our major rodeos, starting with Houston when it canceled in the middle. But lots of small rodeos did a very good job of taking up the slack. Got to see it. Those places got to see a lot of world champions that would have otherwise never went to those places. But
okay, good.
No, I mean, as far as I've seen, the crowds have been decent. We haven't had any outbreaks at any rodeos that I'm aware of.
Okay, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. I'm going to ask Jim or Matt or Harold, how are things on the racing side? I mean, you guys are missing your spectators and that kind of thing, but how are the folks that are on the track responding to all this?
It's Jim. I'll be happy to reply on behalf of our team. Well, it's been a challenging year for sure. On the racing side, it's been interesting. Obviously lost a lot of racing days. Some of our businesses are subsidized by alternative gaming profits, casinos that were not able to open. So our purses that have been distributed this year are way down. Last I looked, in the 25%, 20% range. In some locations, even more. But the interesting part of the business right now is the amount of total dollars bet. It's within 1% of last year. Last year was a banner year, and that is with very little on-site attendance. Many of the racetracks have operated without consumers for quite a while. Some tracks have had just limited attendance. So almost all of the handle has been done online. And what's been a happy event for us is we've increased the amount of racing on television substantially, from 10 years ago to less than 50 hours on kind of a national platform, excluding our national television system, TVG, but now on Fox Sports and on NBC Sports and their associated cable channels, we'll probably exceed 1,000 hours this year. So we think at a time that racing has faced a lot of competition with the advent of sports betting, that there's been some good signs. But make no mistake, this pandemic has affected all of our businesses, jockey clubs, businesses, specifically the ones that rely on live attendance, such as our data business and our publications, are like a lot of other American businesses, have been beaten up. But there's been some signs that we do have a strong fan base, and as things start to open up, I hope we're in a position to take advantage of that. The unique thing about marketing with online bets, we know who they are, we know what their habits are, or the various players know who their habits are, not the jockey club specifically. In the past, when a bettor came into a racetrack, he just made his bet with cash and left, and no one really had much of a digital footprint. Now we have that, and our hope is that that captured information will be things that we can market to as a sport and sustain customers longer than we have been able to in the past. So it's good news, bad news. On the breeding side, we're down about 4%, I believe. The reports of mare's bred, and we expect the contraction in the foal crop in the 5% range. That'll happen. That's happened in the past, but we're now seeing a North American foal crop that will be below 20,000. So the first time since, I'm guessing, since the early 60s. Matt or Harold can probably fact check me on that. But it is ownership of a racehorse, the thoroughbred racehorse, is an expensive proposition. We are seeing more micro share ownership interests, including the one that won the Kentucky Derby this year. That has to happen for the sport to be sustainable. It's very difficult to find millionaires that are willing to invest as they have in the past. So that's our report. And Matt, Harold, anything you wish to offer?
No, I think that's fine, Jim. You hit the highlights. The disparity between purses and handle is fairly notable. It's an interesting dichotomy that's going on there.
I think the only other statistic I would mention, you pretty much kind of covered though, Jim, is that the average field size has been up, because of the fewer races.
Yeah, I figured that was the case too.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Well,
Thank you.
As Jim pointed out, some good and some bad. Christy Landwehr, are you still out there? Because I'd love to hear what your organization has seen. Christy's the CEO over at the Certified Horsemanship Association, and they're our feeder system for shows and competitions. They're the ones out there teaching the lessons and offering the programs. Christy, what impacts did you guys see from the pandemic?
Thanks, Julie. It was scary at first when everything shut down and insurance companies said they wouldn't insure people that taught writing lessons. So that was kind of scary. So we had no choice but to not teach. And then some people now are having the best August and the best Septembers they've ever had.
Mhm.
And that's great. So that's your camps, that's your beginner lesson barn programs. They're just doing great now. So I'm excited that, you know, maybe the future does look bright, as Billy was talking about in regards to our sport and being able to understand that it is a social distance sport, an outside sport. And while other sports are down, let's take advantage of that.
Yeah. Thanks, Christy. Gary, are you still on the line? Because I love your comment in the chat. You said it's widely known that cowboy hats are PPE. So what's going on over there in the Reining Association? Maybe he's out there. Maybe we lost him.
I see his number there, Julie, but
I thought his number was still out there. You have to do *6 to unmute yourself, Gary, I think.
How's that, Julie?
That's good, Gary. So what's going on with the Rainers? I know you what are you getting, sleet today in Oklahoma City?
Yeah, we have an ice storm, and there's not a single tree in Oklahoma that's lost a single leaf. So they're taking the full brunt of this storm. Therefore, the power lines are as well. So, been an interesting year. We made lots of changes we wouldn't have made otherwise that are going to be with us long term, and I think positive all the way around. When we shut down, we closed our office and sent everyone home on March the 13th. We had launched a new software product that we developed with shameless plug here, our friends at the Jockey Club Technology Company, and it actually worked. And so our folks could work from home quite effectively, and which is a good thing because at least for the short term, we were forced to do that. Like some others, our shows completely shut down depending on which jurisdiction they happen to be in. As y'all know, some tighter, some looser. In Oklahoma, we have kind of a good standoff between a Democratic mayor in Oklahoma City and a Republican governor for the state, and they've sort of kept one another honest and managed our numbers pretty well. Therefore, we've been able to go forward. And you know, Billy and I were talking about this the other day. It's turned out to be a unforeseen blessing that we don't have great crowd attendance at our shows. So from a revenue perspective, our gate is not huge. We make our money, for example, at our show, the biggest part of it comes from our sale, which we've had to move and social distance and go online with and adapt to the times. As an association, it also helped us eliminate some programs that probably needed to be sunsetted a number of years ago. We're doing more of our functions digitally, such as our draw parties. I think those will stay in place going forward, which, you know, probably should. Show numbers, you know, we're 0 and now they're up almost everywhere. And I don't know that if our exhibitors think about their show horses this way, but these show horses have very unpredictable shelf life because of soundness, because of training, because of age, because of maybe the age of the exhibitor. So when you have one that's going down the road, people are so motivated to keep going because they don't know when that's going to stop. And a lot of times it's not necessarily your choice. So knock on wood, y'all can't see, that's my skull. We're going to get to have a Futuri because our crowds are light traditionally. the group that we've seen firsthand be the most aggressive and most effective on the COVID side has been our friends at the USEF. We witnessed that with the Arabian Youth Show. I wasn't in town for the Morgan show, but I heard much the same reports. And those sort of things help us all when our partners and colleagues are professional and cautious and use good sense. So hopefully that will get us and AQHA through the end of the year. And I think the good news and the bad news about this year is some of the things that we've learned will last, and I think some of the things we have learned, we still don't really know what we've learned because they may or may not be repeatable. So that's kind of our overview, Julie.
Thank you, Gary. That's a good summary, a great way to take a look at it. I can honestly say from just an administrative point of view at the American Horse Council, we had the ability to do some remote work and to do some things, and we just had not really taken advantage of that. So you're right in that we tried some new things and implemented some new practices that some are going to stick around, some maybe not so much. We'll see. Anybody else out there that wants to speak up and contribute to this conversation? It sounds like we've all had some similar experiences, and what I really wanted out of this conversation was just to share that and make sure that we continue to keep that open dialogue amongst this committee and its participants, so we can leverage, sort of those best practices and the lessons learned and help each other out. I think you're exactly right, Gary. I spoke on a number of webinars over the last few months, and I just kept repeating and repeating, please, everybody, regardless of your breed or discipline, follow social distancing, wear a mask, make us look good, because if somebody out there has a difficulty, then another breed or discipline is going to have some challenges too. We don't want to paint ourselves in a bad light. Anybody else want to contribute? Okay, so I'm going to move on to my next subject. This is a great segue. So what I've been trying to do here with this first conversation about the pandemic is talk about what's going on in our industry and how we can help each other, how we can learn from one another. And that's what we want to do on the topic of diversity, equality, and inclusion. I've already seen a number of organizations starting to outline some steps that they're taking, start to make some action plans. Bill's got some stuff he's going to share tomorrow on our call. I wanted to just basically do a shout out. Dr. Veronica Lack is our keynote tomorrow for diversity, equality, and inclusion. She's got a fabulous presentation, and then we're going to have a panel discussion, just like sort of what we did here. I've got 5 or 6 executives that are going to share what their organizations are doing, because we're all in very different geographic locations. Different HR practices come into play, but also what we're thinking about as we want to attract other people into our sport. We want them to identify and feel that they can be part of our sport. So we want to talk a little bit about sort of that marketing and that messaging. So lots of different things to talk about tomorrow as it relates to diversity, equality, and inclusion. And I'll just take a moment to say, anybody want to share anything right now about that before we move on? I've seen a lot of really interesting articles. Chronicle of the Horse, USEF's magazine just came out, a number of different sources out there. You'll recall last year, this committee heard from the Cowgirls of Color. There's Ebony Horsemen, there's Compton Cowboys. There's a number of different organizations out there that are great resources that we're going to invite to be part of the conversation as we start to think about forming a working group at the American Horse Council made up of a representative from each of these organizations to talk about diversity. So Eleanor.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about that is that there are a lot of people of color who have an interest in our industry. They just don't have a good entry point there, and we just need to do what we can to help them get in, because it's about, we always wrestle with our pipeline of younger people, and here's a pool of younger people who have an interest, and what can we do to facilitate that? And I think there's a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, we can talk about that tomorrow.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in? I'm looking forward to the conversation tomorrow. I think it'll be a really good start for us to think through some strategies that we want to do. Okay, with that, I'll go to my last topic for today. Okay, Cliff, you keep me honest here. I don't want a Pinocchio on my record. I think we started talking 4 years ago about doing an equine research summit. This was intended to bring together all of the researchers from academia with all of the funders for research and talk about what's working, what's not working, how we can streamline the process, how we can stretch our dollars to get more research done. I have challenged the group to not think of equine research just as medical research, but to think about it in terms of a holistic approach. Maybe we want to look at research for turf. Maybe we want to look at research for helmets. Maybe we've got a lot of different things that we could put some research dollars towards that would probably be beneficial. When Brian and Cliff and I go up on the Hill and go into congressional offices, that kind of data is invaluable in making our case, and the ability for us to demonstrate that we are being proactive by doing this research really goes a long way, rather than, well, somewhere down the road, someone saying, well, you don't have any data to substantiate whatever you're claiming, and then we have to go do some research. So again, pandemic came along, it caused us to have to take a pause there. So we are looking at next year doing the Equine Research Summit. We may do it virtually because a lot of the academia have got some challenges with travel budgets and may be unable to travel, or who knows what the reasons might be. But we're gonna get started on that again. Cliff, do you want to add anything to that?
No, just that, you know, as Julie mentioned, this has taken a long time to get off the ground. We are, and because of that time lag, the nature of the topics and the scale and the scope of the whole meeting in general have grown and changed a lot. And so, you know, we continue to, please be patient with us, and we're looking forward to hosting something in the next year.
Yeah, we're excited about it. Okay, so I'm going to read to you your committee's recommendation from last year to our Board of Trustees. You said, ask the AHC staff to collaborate and explore ways to promote the Equine Disease Communication Center and equine research funding needs through a variety of mechanisms. And so that was, okay, can we create a GoFundMe site? What can we do? I mean, we just brainstormed. So we formed a little working group to work on this. We drafted a concept. We circulated that around. Everybody seemed to get fairly comfortable with the idea that we wouldn't overly structure this. We would outline how an incentive plan might work. We would give some parameters, and we would ask each breed and discipline association to come up with what they thought might be a way that they could contribute to something like this. I was going to call on Rob Burke. I don't know if Rob, are you on today? I'm not seeing your name. I don't know that Rob made it today, but the Eventing Association created an incentive plan, I think 2 years ago, and they charge, or it's a voluntary thing, but people can contribute $1 for each entry, and they raise about $40,000 a year, which goes towards equine research. So we sort of looked at them as a model of something we could suggest to other breeds and discipline groups, and we put that on the back burner during COVID. But we're ready now. We're going to dust it off, and we're going to start circulating it again and ask people to give us some comments. This is not what is traditionally called a checkoff program, and we're intentionally staying away from that phrase because some states do have checkoff programs already in place, and we don't want to confuse participants in our world with the fact that you may have a checkoff program in one state and then we're overlaying another checkoff program. So we're calling this an incentive program, which is a voluntary program that people could contribute to equine research. I'm continuing, as is Cliff and Brian, to work with a lot of different universities who are doing some fabulous research. We are offering ourselves as a mechanism to get the word out about the research that they're doing. I've worked really closely with Dr. Toonlin at University of Kentucky and a couple of others out there who are doing some really fascinating research. So if you have contacts in the research space and they're trying to survey or do focus groups or trying to contact equestrians or horse owners to try to get some data to help with the research they're doing, let us know and we'll promote it and get the word out there. So anybody comments or questions about Equine Research Summit or the ideas behind funding more equine research?
Julie, this is Marianne again, and I've had a conversation with Cliff about this. I would encourage to include it more than just the physical research, because we have so much research in the equitation science and the horse welfare now. So to include, and I guess because I'm just finished up doing a research analysis internationally, I had no idea how many researchers have been working on that field in looking at mental emotional stress management and performance horses. So, and I know that they're all very eager to share. So just keep that in mind, maybe.
I sure will. I will tell you that Molly Sweeney and the folks over at Horses and Humans Research Foundation are definitely on my radar. I've got a couple of others. So this is one of those really holistic kinds of things we'd like to get into.
Well, and I'll put it back on the physiological, is that there's so many new techniques that we can be using. The facial coding systems, there's about 4 different ones that show and correlate to cortisone levels and eye temperature and heart rate variability. So very simple techniques that has come out of different countries looking at stress in horses, performance stress, and what causes it and what doesn't. And so, yeah, I think that there's definitely worth a conversation, including a lot of that information. It'll be helpful for us looking at disease, correlating it to disease.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. Anybody else questions? Is there any other new business that you want to raise today? Anybody? Some burning issue on your mind you want to throw out to get the group to talk about?
Well, I have another question then.
Okay.
Some of the new groups, because I think someone else mentioned it earlier when they were dealing with the disaster relief. Because we don't have a pipeline that's very well known for people that come up with ideas, I've noticed through social media that there suddenly will be a group doing something completely different. And while their competition or their group activities are not sanctioned or coordinated, they do seem to be gaining support by certain groups of people. And so my question is there a pathway or an entry or a door or a little guidebook to, if you're looking at starting new competitions or starting a new discipline of activities with horses, is there a place to put that to share what you're doing? It's like the scent therapy, what they're doing with using horses to find smells like they do with dogs now. That's a competition. And there's others that are doing, the trail. And in Europe, they're bringing over where they're doing dressage, working cows and trail. And so these are outside of our organizations, but they're growing in interest. So that's my question.
Okay, great question. Let me and Cliff have a little offline conversation and we'll come back to you, Marianne, with some ideas there. I know for personal reasons, our conference was originally planned to be in Denver in June, and we initially planned to just postpone it and do it this week in Denver, and then we had to go virtual. But I say all that because one of our panelists was going to be the executive director from the Western Dressage Association, which is growing by leaps and bounds.
Yep.
And one of our speakers tomorrow is with the American Dude Ranch Association, because they're seeing a huge uptick in people wanting to get outside and ride. So your point's well taken. Let me and Cliff have a little bit of conversation and we'll get back with you.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else questions? Okay, well, having said that, is Billy still on with me? Billy Smith?
Yeah.
There's
yeah,
Billy.
Mo.
Okay, so Billy's helping me facilitate this, and normally what happens at this stage of the meeting is we go into executive session so the committee members can determine if there's anything that they would like to send forward to the Board of Trustees. So I'm going to ask, if you are not a committee member, please drop off the call, drop off this video link, and we'll just convene the committee, and we'll see, Billy, if there's anything pressing that we want to talk about.
Great.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Those of you who are dropping off, we appreciate it. We hope you'll come back at 1 when we have the United Horse Coalition.